Welcome, everyone. This is Coach Rojas, and welcome to another episode of Ask Coach video series. We've covered a number of questions already, but we obviously, as we get more questions from parents and even kids, we'd like to add more to the series. We're doing another one today, basically entitled, Why Do We Run So Much the Day or Days Before a Race or Races, especially in the mid-season. So we're going to get into why don't we rest the kids, for example, not run the day right before a race, especially in our cases where many times it's an afternoon practice and then we have a morning race the next morning. So we'll get into that a little bit of the explanation. And we're really talking about mid-season. We're not talking post-season, which is different, and we'll explain that as well. All right, so again, why don't we rest them? Logic would dictate, right? The Friday afternoon practice, we'd either take it really light, maybe run a couple of miles and that's it, make sure they're rested, or even take it off, rest, because we have a race not only a day, later, but 12 hours later, right, or less the next morning. And the reason, especially in this case, we've been doing a lot of time trials and not a lot of big, super important races, is because we don't want to miss a day of practice. We want to make sure every day counts. So for example, if we have 5, 6, 7 time trials, during the mid-season of the race, and we take off those days because we want to make sure the kids are rested. First of all, will they do better? Yeah, they will. They'll do a little better in those races. They'll be a little bit more rested. They can almost guarantee a few seconds improvement in the mile, maybe a dozen seconds improvement in a 2-mile or 3,000 meter race. And which is great, right? Something we want to see. The problem with that is that if we start adding those in, we've taken off, let's say, 2 or 3 miles on that Friday that we normally would have done every Friday that we're racing. Now multiply that by 5. Now we've taken off, 3 times 5. That's 15, miles that we could have been doing in training that we're not. And the reality is that improvement, or not even improvement, that ability to run a little faster at those races will become diminished, right? As the season goes on, they will have missed practice time or missed running time, missed mileage that could have been useful for them improving in the long run. And that benefit of being rested is going to become less and less, because not only will they be rested, yes, but they'll be a little out of shape as well. So we don't want that to happen. We want to focus on the postseason. So yes, when it comes to the mid-season, meaning after the first month is done and all the way up until the last month of training for that season, we call that the mid-season. And they're going to run tired, meaning they're going to run races where their legs are not going to be fully rested. They're going to be a little tired. They're going to perform a little less, but that's okay. At the end of the day, they learn how to run on tired legs. They learn how to push a little harder. We're not missing days of practice. We're not missing mileage along the way. And we're making sure that they get, the full extent of what we're trying to get out of that season. And then at the end of the season, whether it be our local team final time trial, or whether it be the more serious postseason going into district and regional qualifiers and the national championships, of course, they'll be in a better place. And by then we will rest them, right? And that'll be a separate video, but tapering is super important. But that comes at the postseason. So again, the focus is them doing well in the postseason, whether that is our kids that are doing it again at our local race, or whether the kids in the national championship, we will make sure they're fully rested and run at their peak at that time. So peaking at the right moment, super important, and that's where it counts, right? We need to make sure these kids can run well when it counts. And traditionally we have, whether it be here on the Warriors or my previous experience with the high school teams, we tend to run better in the postseason than most teams. When we take in the Warriors out to national championships, comparatively speaking to kids that beat our kids at the regional or at the district or local races in the past, our kids tend to beat them in those final championship races. Same with the high school team. We had a lot of success in the postseason. We honestly beat teams that were faster than us. They were legitimately faster teams than we were, but we peaked at the right time. And we were able to steal the full slots and jump to state and things of that nature. And last but not least, one thing about tapering, which again, this is a whole separate video on that, but when we do rest the kids in the postseason, and we do have them run less before the big meets, and maybe even take a day off the day before national championships, that is, a lot of people call that a science. It's not. Running is very scientific, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to tapering, there's a lot of science and there's a lot of art involved in it. It's a very finesse, it's very picky. There is no right way to do it. There's no right way for every athlete, because it varies per athlete, and it's something that you begin to get a feel for. But you'll see that as we do that at the end of the season. But hopefully this answers the question as to why are we running so much? Why are we resting the kids if they have a race the next day? We want them to do good in the long run, hence distance running, right? We don't want them to really peak at the wrong times in terms of, having one great race in the middle of the season and then not performing as well as they can be at the end of the season. So hopefully that answers that question, parents and kids, right? Again, feel free to ask follow-up questions. We'll create videos for those, or I'll talk to you independently. Thank you for joining us. See you at the next one.